Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to Vignan Technologies. So let's understand the scenario that I'm going to cover in this session. So the scenario would be like this. There's a folder called source. There's a folder called archive. So the files would be placed in the folder called source. Okay? And we have to create a BODS job to check if the files are present in this particular folder or not. So if the files are present, so we have to process the multiple files into the target table, and then once the files are processed, we have to move the files to archive folder. So no files are present in the folder, so we have to print a message saying no files present in the source folder, and then complete the job execution. Okay. So this is a scenario that we have to cover. So let me take you through how do we implement this particular scenario. So to create this scenario as a first step, I'll just create the global variables here. So these global variables would be source path, which is used to capture the source file path, and archive path where the files will be moved to, and the file format name. Since we have to process multiple files at a time, so we cannot really give a file name, so we have to give a format based on which all the files would be processed, and file names to capture all the file names, and then file count. This is to capture how many files are present in the folder or not. Okay, so we just create these five variables at a job level. So once this is done, we initialize all the required variables. So initialize the required variables here, and once this is done, we have to get the file count. We have to get the file count from the folder. So how do I get the file count from the folder? How do I check if the files are present in the source folder or not? So for that, there is a function called wait for the file. Okay. So what this function does is it requires a source path along with along with the file format. So this can check how many files are present in the folder, and based on that, it can give you a file count, and it can give all the file names into the variables. So once you get the file count and the file variables, and we have to use an if then else condition here. So in the if then else conditional workflow, we have to put a condition like if the file count, so file count greater than or equals to 0. So which means that there are files present in the folder. So if the files are present in the folder, so what we should be doing here? So we'll have to process the files into the respective target. So I just use a data flow here. And in the data flow, I use a source as a file format. And then I use a target as a SQL Server table here. Let me just write down the source here. So I would be using a file format, and then your target would be a SQL Server database. Okay, so I apply the transformation logics as per the business requirement inside this data flow, and then this will process all the files based on the file format name. And once these files are processed, I have to move the files to archive folder. To move the files to the archive folder, what I would do is I would use a function called file underscore move. So what this file underscore move does is, so it requires a source path, and it requires a source path and the files which have to be moved. So here it accepts the regular expressions as well, regular expressions when you are specifying the file names, and then we have to specify the archive path, so where the files have to be moved, and there is a flag which indicates whether you want to overwrite the existing file or you want to create the new files. So we have to use the file underscore move in a script to move the files from one folder to another folder. So this completes the file movement from one folder to another folder upon the successful execution of the file format. If the file count is 0, which means that no files are present, so this has to go to the else block, and the else block we have to use a script, and inside the script we have to say no files are present in the folder. Okay, so this is a statement that we have to print. Okay, so this is the design that how I'm going to do to implement this particular scenario. Please watch the next video to understand the implementation part of this scenario. Thanks for watching the session.